We are at Plum Bayou Mounds Archeological State Park. It is 7:30 on Saturday morning. I thought we might take this opportunity to go around and film a little bit of the site and look at some of the places we've been talking about and kind of what we know about those places, so you can see what they look like right now on the ground, and we can talk a little bit about some of the features of the slumping and the spread and things like that that we talked about from the Toltec Mounds book that we've been reading. I'm gonna go ahead and walk out towards some of the mounds. You can see some of the slumping on Mound B really well this morning, so I'm hoping it shows up on camera. So again, we'll just kind of see what we can see what we can learn out here. So when you first get out to the site, the first thing you see are the two big mounds. So we've got B on the right, A on the left, and then you can kind of see that smaller one over there, that's C. And those white tents are where we are going to be excavating this summer in the plaza area, like we talked about. So we're gonna walk out that way, but this gives you kind of an overview of the site. And then this way, we were going to excavate in this secondary plaza area on Mound J out there, but remember we talked that that side of the site is quite low and we've had quite a lot of rain, so right now it's very swampy out there and we are not excavating. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that next week we can get out there and put in some units, but for right now we can't get out to that side of the site, which does again kind of remind us that this was an area that's always been low, and that's why we don't know a lot about it, because it's always hard to excavate out there. We are right up close to Mound B. You can see we can't even get all of Mound B in the shot, standing right across this little path. There's a little viewing area. So it's a big mound. And you know, we talked about it's 39 feet tall. So we can see it's very big. And in the pictures we saw in the video, were black and white obviously, but also there was that trench that was from erosion, and then the excavators dug out so they could see the profile of how the mound was built. And that's what you're seeing right here. Get my finger in there. This kind of slumped area that's like not shaped quite right. So that's where that trench was. And after they did the profiling, they filled it in with soil to stop the erosion. And it did for the most part, but you can see that the dirt is slumping back out of it right there. And that's what's making that weird shape at the bottom that you can see. You can't see it as well on camera as you can see it in person. Let me see if I can get a different perspective from over here. But so it's interesting to think about the fact that, you know, in 750, people built these mounds, and for the most part, they're still standing, and they're eroding a little bit and kind of slumping out at the bottom just a tad, but we filled it in with modern soil in the 80s, and already 40 years later it's slumping down. And so just like the technology to build these things and keep them standing for all this time is really just that much more impressive, when you would think that with engineering and stuff we'd know how to do this really well, and we can't even keep like a patch job completely up and standing. And you can see too, the mounds, they do get mowed once in a while, but not as much as the rest of the grass, just to try to keep them safer. We don't want heavy equipment up there. They did recently get some more new lighter mowers, but we don't want heavy equipment on the mound. And we also want that long grass roots to be in the mound to help hold the soil in as well. But we don't want trees growing, because when trees fall, that causes problems as well. So yeah, again, this is Mound B in person. We get to see how it is 50 years after we saw those pictures of that profile, maybe even 60 years, I'm not sure. So very neat to see that it's still standing, and kind of how they covered it back up when they were done with the excavations there. And just a quick perspective, we didn't talk about Mound A too much because we haven't done any excavations ever on Mound A, but I'm standing again right by Mound B, and that's Mound A, which is even taller. 48 feet tall, I think we said. And it's right on the lake. So I'm gonna see if I can get over down this path. We said they took out the boardwalk, so we can't go all the way down the path. I'm gonna see if we can kind of see around the back of the mound to the lake. This is where that boardwalk that we talked about was. You can see the path ends beneath my shadow here. They've taken the boardwalk out like we talked about. They're hoping to put a new one back in. But back here is where some of those trenches that they excavated in the 70s and 80s were put in, and that they had more of a mixed context over here. They talked about some erosional problems, and it kind of does look like that when you look at the landscape as it stands and it's been taken care of. The mound comes down, and then you come down another level, and it does seem like things kind of erode into the lake over here. Then you've got Mound F over here, which again we didn't talk about. There's not been much work done there. So I'm gonna go around to the other side of the mound and see if we can get a better angle and look at maybe kind of an idea of where those trenches were that had the really good intact in context deposits that they talked about in the Toltec Mounds book. And then we can also get a good view of the plaza area, right? So between all of these mounds, so that's Mound C, you saw Mound A over to the right, and then we'll be excavating kind of in this plaza area between mounds, and then we go around to B. But you can see it's just a real big open area where, as we talked about, there's not, I mean, at this point we can't see them because of the grass cover, but when they've looked in the past, there's not a lot of artifacts on the surface, possibly because this was an area where people were gathering and doing things, but not maybe like living for long terms or doing things that caused huge changes to the surface. Because when we're talking about archaeology, typically what we find is places where people were for a longer amount of time, because when you're somewhere longer, you leave more evidence of yourself on the surface. So you can see, you know, we're putting up these tents and things. You can kind of see them. Let me see if I can zoom in. To do these excavations, and we've found in the past when we've gone back to places, even just being there for 2 weeks, if we come back years later, we'll find some evidence of our excavations being out there. We'll find like pieces of pens or battery or just things that people dropped. And the longer you stay in a place, the longer you are, you know, the more likely you are to drop things that will become part of the archaeological record. So when people were just, you know, 1,000 years ago out on this area doing something for a couple of days, there's not a whole lot of evidence of that. And archaeologically, we like to find houses and things like that because people lived in a place. You live in a house for a lot of years, and so a lot of evidence gets left on the surface that then, you know, gets buried for archaeologists to find and understand how people were living and what kinds of things they were doing. And when you're at a more ceremonial site where people came and went and did things, but didn't necessarily stay for a long time doing the same thing, it's a little more difficult to parse out. So hopefully this summer we can find some of that evidence of what people were doing out on this plaza. We've got some good spots picked out based on some of the evidence that we have from the past and some geophysical work that we've done. So fingers crossed we'll find some good information out here this summer and learn a lot more about what people were doing at this site. So on this side, you can see we're by Mound A again, but on the south side, when you look, you don't see nearly so much of that erosion on this side. So you can see the path ends, the boardwalk was there. We go around to the lake edge, there's Mound R over there. Again, not much work done there. But yeah, so you can understand when looking at this landscape why there would have been really intact deposits over here, because just even still, it looks much less eroded on this side of the mound. So this is the side that they found those intact deposits before they put in the pylons for the boardwalk back in the 70s or 80s when they first put it up, or were thinking of putting it up. So, and then yeah, just a good view of the lake. So this big mound overlooking a lake, very cool, beautiful area. And there's a housing development across the road if you can see any, or across the lake if you can see any of those back there. So kind of give you a quick spin. There is a whole book about Mound D, which is right over there. So we might take that one up next. It's not nearly as big as the one we just went through, so we can probably get through it in a video or two. Just kind of combine chapters, figure out what was going on over there. I don't know, I have not read that book yet myself. I've skimmed through it, but so that might be interesting to know. You can see that's kind of where our parking area is for the training program, and then again we turn around, we see Mound C, and then the plaza where we're working this summer. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye.